What's up, everybody? Dr. Trevor Wilkins here, the Angry Viking therapist. And one of the things I commonly get asked about is EMDR. I'm a firm believer in this EMDR. You may have researched its eye movement desensitization reprocessing. Don't get too caught up on the name. In fact, the creator kind of wishes she'd have named it something else. She used to say before she passed away, but now it's getting pretty well known. It's been around for a long time. It's just becoming more and more popular, in my opinion, because of the number of soldiers that we have coming back from the military that are now just not seeing one thing, two things, they're seeing multiple deployments, multiple things. So EMDR is one of the modalities that is most primarily used for trauma. It is recognized by the World Health Organization as being one of the most prominent and prevalent and strong working therapy theories for trauma. Now, it can be used for lots of other things. And if you dig through the internet or listen to some podcasts, you'll find out a lot about that, and that's good. But so I'll get a lot of questions about EMDR, but it has been around for a long time, over 30 years, just gaining more popularity. That's great. I don't have any problem with that. One of the problems, though, with it gaining popularity, much like many other things that you'll find in any other fields of practice, is that people will try to use it as kind of a cure-all. Well, it's not a cure-all. It's a great thing. Here's what I want you to know about EMDR, is that what it treats is maladaptively or unprocessed memories. Think about that, maladaptively or unprocessed memories. Now, that may have a couple of different ways those come out with people. One is kind of easy ones that are easy to figure out, right? Let's say that you got into a car wreck a couple of years ago and you're still really scared to get in a car. You're completely freaked out when you're driving. That limbic system that I've made other videos about is really kicking on, that fight or flight system. That one's a pretty easy one to figure out. I'm not saying it's easy to treat. We're going to use things like EMDR or some kind of cognitive therapy along with it. I am highly trained in rational motor behavior therapy, but I'll make another video about that. So we're going to use this EMDR to, in effect, get that wreck memory either processed or processed correctly, if that's what's going on. And we're going to ask you a bunch of questions about that. We're going to see if that's what it really ties back to. We're not just going to say, oh, you definitely have a problem with this car wreck. Maybe it has to do with feelings of helpless or hopeless from other life event, and this car wreck just kind of kicked it off again. But maybe it is just as simple as, I was in a horrible car wreck. I can still hear the sounds when I close my eyes. I still freak out about it at night. I still have a problem with it when I'm in my car. That's something that EMDR is great for. That limbic system is really kicking off. It's really firing that fight or flight system that's going off. But it can also be much more complex or even more complicated than that. And to be perfectly honest, the people that I treat with EMDR, rarely is it just this one thing they're coming in for. It does happen. I'm happy to help with that. That I see a lot when it comes to public safety and military, which are a lot of people that I treat. But I see that because they're dealing with really recent critical events. What I found, though, in all these years of treating trauma with EMDR is it may not look quite as simple as that. What I like to say is that today's dysfunctional emotions are created by earlier life events that left us feeling helpless, hopeless, or not good enough. And usually it's all three. If that you just felt that when I said helpless, hopeless, or not good enough, maybe EMDR is a good place to start. Again, it's not a catch-all, but I'm going to get to that. If you have an event in your life or series of events in your life that left you feeling that way, say it is from that car wreck, say it is from a critical event you saw 10 years ago, say it is from military combat, maybe it's from your childhood where you never felt anything but helpless and hopeless, not good enough because of critical events. Now, if you do research about EMDR, you're going to see that there's lots of different ways to use EMDR to affect somatic experiencing, the physical part that might be of trauma. It can be very calming. It can be a way to kind of slow down that limbic system. We use things like Safe Calm Place that can help with that. But here's sometimes is where EMDR gets overused, in my personal opinion. This is Dr. Wilkins' personal opinion. Now, I don't diminish any other therapist for trying to use this modality to help their client. That's great. They're not my client. I'm not going to sit here and trash other therapists that maybe use it for a place where EMDR is not known necessarily to be helpful or created for, but I do see it not overused per se of trying things where I see the use out of it is the promises about what it can do, right? If you're not dealing with maladaptively unprocessed memories, which it may take us a little while to get to. Maybe that's coming from physical things. Maybe that's coming from that limbic system. Maybe it's coming from these feelings of helpless, hopeless, and not good enough. If that's tied to an incident that's not processed or is processed in the wrong way, and you can check out my other videos about how those hemispheres of the brain work, especially for REM sleep, which is what we're duplicating in a different frequency with things like bilateral stimulation, the eye movements, the sounds, things that we'll get into in other videos about how it actually works. Where it concerns me, though, and where I get a lot of questions that people might sound disappointed about the answer is, well, I've tried everything else. I want to try EMDR. Well, maybe it is for you. Let's start that conversation, or start that conversation with your therapist, or start that conversation with somebody that's knowledgeable about EMDR, or reach out to me through all the different ways that I give you at the end of this video to talk to me. That doesn't mean you have to use me. Maybe you just have a question that I can clarify. But it gets overly promised about a lot of things, right? And people will come in and say, man, I've tried everything else. It's got to be the only solution. Maybe. But I'll be honest with you. Maybe not. And in fact, with the people that I work with on a regular basis, probably not. That doesn't mean we're not going to check into it. We have lots of different questions as highly trained EMDR therapists and certified therapists and consultants that we can kind of dig around a little bit, not by reopening the memory, but dig around about why the things happening today might be tied back to an incident that's either maladaptively processed or unprocessed. I know I've said that quite a few times, but I want you to understand that's what EMDR does. Now, maybe some EMDR therapist listening to this disagrees that that's the primary thing, or maybe they say that's the primary thing, but there's other things they feel like it works with. That's okay. I'm not here to, again, bemoan or negate or anything else for any other therapist. If it works for your client, that's awesome. But where I think people get disappointed and where I get a little heartbreak or difficulty talking to people is when they say, well, I want to try EMDR therapy. That's great. Let's look into it. Let's have a consultation about it. Let's have a conversation about it. Maybe it is for you, but I'm going to have some questions for you. Now, you see in my other videos that I also practice things like rational emotive behavior therapy. It's actually what I use most of the time, because most of the time, our emotions are caused by our beliefs. Now, us REBT therapists will tell you that's always the case, but that fits well into EMDR. Our beliefs about an event cause our emotion. If it's tied to this whole part of the overreaction, the overemotion, then maybe it is an EMDR if it's a maladaptively processed or unprocessed memory. But most of my clients actually don't need EMDR. It's probably not going to hurt them, except for maybe what they've paid for it for somebody, or used their insurance, or spent the time. So maybe there's a little damage there, but it's probably mitigatable. I've never known EMDR to make things worse, and I think you'd have trouble finding literature in that it does. But most of my time is not spent in EMDR. I'm a highly trained and highly experienced therapist in EMDR. I either consult with other people that are learning to get their certification after their training to be better EMDR therapists. I highly believe in it. But I worry about, and honestly hurt a little bit for people when they call and say, I definitely need EMDR therapy, or they hit me up in direct messages through Instagram or through my email or through my website where I can text with you. And they say, I definitely have to do EMDR therapy. Nothing else will work. Let's have a conversation about that. Maybe what you've tried before wasn't a good fit. Maybe the therapist that you talked to before, the coach you talked to before wasn't a good fit. Maybe they just didn't use the modality that worked for you. Again, I don't want you to think negative in any way of EMDR. I think it can be a life-saving modality. It helped me immensely with maladaptively processed and unprocessed memories. What it didn't help me with was my anger because of the irrational demands I was making about myself and other people in the world, the labels that I was giving to that, the awfulizing, making everything terrible, the low frustration tolerance, feeling like I couldn't handle things, the irrational demands and the labels that I was making. All important. Maybe all things that can help through EMDR if for the right thing. Now, maybe I'll catch a lot of hell for this from EMDR therapists, but I was trained very highly by an individual who trained directly with the creator of EMDR. And while I think it can constantly change and mold and new things can come out of that, maybe grow the modality, I think that's awesome. I think there's so many other things than just the 8 steps or the 8 phases clinically that we're taught. I do think there can be more to it. But again, this video is because of the disappointment I hear from some people that they want to definitely do EMDR. And how many sessions does it take? And how much is it going to cost? Hang on. Let's make sure it's the right modality. I don't want to lead you down a path of spending money with whether it's me or a therapist or somebody else that's trained in this or somebody else that's trained well in trauma, if it's not going to be the right fit for you. So I encourage you to talk to one of us. Talk to an EMDR therapist or somebody knowledgeable about whether it's the right fit for you. And not all therapists are created the same. You're going to hear me say that hundreds of times through these videos. That doesn't mean I think I'm better than everybody else or the best. But I promise you, go visit 5. You'll get 5 different things from 5 different therapists. We're not all created equal. We're not trained the same. Some people stop studying and getting better at their craft. Some people are stuck in the way that they are. Okay. Maybe it works for them and their clients. My sole purpose is for you to no longer live with that anger or anxiety or depression or guilt that you're stuck with. That's all I care about. What is it going to take? Is it EMDR? Maybe. Is it things like rational behavior therapy, which I use a whole lot more? Stoic philosophy, which is a big part of rational behavior therapy? Maybe. Let's have a conversation about it. I will tell you personally that I do a lot more rational motor behavior therapy and a lot more Stoic philosophy and a lot more consulting about that than I do about EMDR, with the exception of the teaching side and the consulting side of EMDR to other EMDR therapists. But I think what happens is a lot of people see this EMDR, see the videos about it, think it's going to be this magical thing. It's not magical. It's not magical. It's how the brain works. Maybe it's for you, maybe it's not. I don't want to discourage you from asking about it. Please talk to us about it. Send me a message. Go to my website. Click on the link. I'll text personally with you. Talk to a local therapist near you. Go to EMDRIA.org and click Find a Therapist. Find a knowledgeable, trained EMDR therapist near you and talk to them about it. But it's not a catch-all, folks. It's not. And if you go to a therapist that says that that's all they do, now I would have some concern. Maybe it's worked for most of their clients like REBT works for most of mine. But please don't go in there demanding EMDR and upset that the highly trained therapist said, I don't think this is a good fit right now. Maybe we need to recommend you to somebody else that thinks it is. A good EMDR trained therapist will walk you through why. We'll walk you through what emotions are going on now. What's dysfunctional? What does that go back to? Maybe you can't think of the exact moment. Maybe you think of a series of things. Maybe it just feels like childhood. We have questions and ways to get through that to maybe identify some of these events that we need to work on. But it's not a catch-all, folks. It's not. It's not. It helped me. It helped me on one event that was causing me problems, that was causing me more problems than just that event. But most of my growth came from other modalities. Most of my growth came from learning things like REBT and Stoic philosophy. I think you need daily things about that. And even if you do EMDR and it's a fit for you, I think you still have to deal with daily functioning and learning how these over emotions are taking you down and how they're completely ruining your family and your career just like it did for me. If I'm the person that you want to talk to about this, I'm easy to find. If I'm the one that you're interested in talking about EMDR, or if you feel like I'm the one that can help you with anything that's going on when it comes to anger, anxiety, depression, guilt, life feeling like it's falling apart, then go to my website, theangryvikingtherapist.com. This is what I do. abt.help is over my shoulder here. That's another shortcut to the website. If I'm the one, fine. If I'm not, I'll help you find one that is. All I care about is you not having to watch these videos to find out how to get past this horrible feeling, this overreaction to emotion, the screaming at your kids for no reason, that ruining your family, that ruining your career, the same things that happened to me. You can watch my other videos for that story. If I'm the fit, great. Please go to my website. Send me a message. I'll text with you personally. We'll figure this out. Send me a direct message on Instagram if you don't want to have your phone number. It's fine. The Angry Viking Therapist on Instagram. All I care about is that you don't have to continue to live this way. You have to continue to feel like you're not living up to your character and to yourself. Let's have that conversation. It might be EMDR. It might not. Let's have the conversation.